Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL Podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL Podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are you today?
I am well, Lake. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. Another exciting episode today, getting back onto the Wish.
It's been a minute, I feel like. Also, we need to get back on the Wish.
I feel that. I don't think I will make it back on the Wish until 27.
I think I'm probably in the same ship. Can't say the same boat. I can't bring myself to do it.
Ship is the correct terminology. But yeah, I am excited for the Wish to do some longer sailings.
I'm excited to see what they're going to do to the Wish for longer sailings. Like, they need to bring, what is the adult show going to be? Is there going to be one? And also, I think there needs to be.
Yeah, like 3 and 4s are very rinse and repeat. Like, you really have to change things up. Which they've done before, because the Dream did 3 and 4s for years and years and years, and you'd probably never know now that that was all it knew for a long time.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's get into this first-time cruiser report on the Wish.
Yeah, one of our favorite styles of shows. We love a first-time cruiser. To do this show, we'd like to welcome on our guest this week, Ashley. Ashley, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Hi, guys.
Awesome. Welcome onto the show. Thank you for filling out the form in our show notes. Well, first, why don't we go ahead and start off with a little bit of your Disney background?
So my family, I grew up, we didn't go to Disney a lot just because financially it was a little hard. It's a bit of a reach, but like my mother was the one who bought all the Disney videos, you know, just having the DVDs on there. And the first time we went, it was right around the time that Disney Cruise Line came about. So I just remember as a kid really loving, you know, really wanting to do it, but my mom is not a big fan of ships, so never got to happen as a kid. So we did the full family vacations down there as a kid twice, once when I was 8, once when I was 12, and then I've been back primarily just to Magic Kingdom, I think twice as an adult. So we haven't been able to get down there a ton. And my husband and I have been married for a decade. We have 2 girls, 5 and 8, and they see the commercials. They've been begging and trying to put together what we wanted to do. And for us, when we're together all at one time, we need options for everybody and a lot of space. And so we felt like the cruise was a better idea than doing like a full-blown Disney vacation. And so we looked at our options and we made it happen. And this cruise was the week of President's Day, which is notorious for prices just jumping up because everybody, well, can't say everybody, where we live, you get the whole week off.
Right.
Because it's snow country. They try to block out sometimes so they don't have to take snow days. But we found the 3-night at the tail end of it where the prices really weren't that bad. So it just kind of worked out. We didn't have to take the kids out of school a ton. So that was how we landed on that.
Love it. And you also decided to do some pre-nights in Walt Disney World.
We did, because flying out of New York in February is risky. And so rather than getting in the day before, like most, you know, anybody would recommend you do when you're going on a cruise, I wanted to get in 2 days before, which left us, if everything went as planned, a full day in Orlando to just kind of escape. And so we adults made the decision on the timeline of when we were going, and it was a Christmas gift to our kids. Biggest secret we've kept, because it was, I mean, we booked it in June and then they didn't find out until Christmas Day, like, so before we could talk about it with them, but we let them help decide what we did that day. And we offered, you know, there's Universal and SeaWorld and all of that. And we landed on Epcot, and that plan it was a little bumpy. We did go through with that plan, but it was maybe would have done some things a little bit differently.
Well, why don't you share that really quick?
I should note, these were my kids' first flights. They had never flown before. So we had, you know, all these experiences to go on. There were a lot of firsts for everybody, but mechanical issue. So they were immediately delayed. And then, you know, I don't even know, time stops when you're traveling. So I couldn't tell you how long it was, but we get another page over the radio and they're like, well, the good news is maintenance is coming out, but the bad news is we have freezing rain. Our connection was only an hour layover. So we were pretty much guaranteed to miss it. But people started to deplane and, we're going back and forth on what we're doing. And I'm like, I don't know, patience has worked for me in these situations before. And by the time I was about ready to get up and go talk to the customer service agents, like I got a text message on my phone that we were automatically rebooked to like the next available flight. Shortly after that happened, they said everything was good to go. They replaned all that. And we got up and we went, and we were flying from Rochester to Baltimore. Once we got it all settled, we knew our layover went from, it was supposed to be an hour, but it was like 3 hours. Like we didn't even leave Baltimore to get to Orlando until like 7:30. And we were staying at Art of Animation, and we had an aerial room, which if you're familiar with the layout is like, it's like one of the farthest from the main hub. And I said, well, we know we're going to be there. We know we're going to make it. So like, I'll just check us in now. And we can skip the desk, just go straight to the room. And I did that, and I get this text message back, and it's like, oh, you're confirmed. You're checked into your family Nemo suite.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, what? But it was real. Like, that was just, we somehow, by luck of the draw, got an upgrade from like the lowest tier room to the highest. And it was awesome because by the time we got there, it was midnight. And we went from like the farthest away to the closest. And like our room was like 2 doors away from the closest entrance to the main resort area. And it was just a really, really, really nice surprise.
That's great. So did you end up going to Epcot the next day?
We did. We let everybody sleep in as much as possible instead of like going to Rope Drop and dragging them there. But it was, and this was a Thursday, so we were hoping that the crowds would have calmed down by then. They did not. Most of the rides were a good hour and a half, 2 hour wait. We hit a couple of the good ones, but the rest of it was just a lot of restless waiting in line. And it was pretty hot, I think, in hindsight. And I did offer, I'm like, we could just have a day at the pool here at the resort if everybody's really too tired. But they're like, no, we really want to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, we're only in Disney now. So let's make it happen. But I think it might have been a little too much, just given how if it had plan A gone the way that it was supposed to, it would have been fine. It's just the travel that day one kind of made everybody a little tired.
Well, let's go ahead and start to turn it towards your cruise. What transportation method did you use to get to the port?
So we used Disney's ground transportation. So we had it all booked up. They picked us up from Art of Animation, and they only had one other stop to do. So like, it wasn't like we were going around all of Disney World to pick up people. But when we started, like we got checked in. The cast member's name was Ashley, who was there. And she immediately looked at my oldest child and she's like, you must be Nora. Like, no idea how she knew that, but she got it. And, it made her day because it's just, one of those little touches that they do. And so we had a little bit of time before we were formally scheduled to go on the bus. Kids played in the arcade, and they brought us out, but then they immediately brought us back in. I guess there was something with the Fantasies motor coach and they needed to take ours. So like something was wrong with it and they took ours and we had to go back in and wait. It wasn't terribly long, but it was like another 10 to 15 minutes before they sent us a new one.
You had all kinds of transportation problems on your trip.
It was like mechanical failure after mechanical. All worked out really well, but it was just, we were starting to count by that point what was going wrong. And then, but they had it fixed relatively quickly. And we walk out and this Ashley from check-in is holding my daughter's hand out to the bus, and it was magical. So then it took a while to get there. It was like a full 90-minute ride, but it was a Friday, so it's a cruise changeover day. So I think that's somewhat to be expected. But then we get there and it took like almost another hour to get through security and the check-in at the port itself.
What time was this approximately?
With the delay of the motor coaches, it was probably 10:30, 10:45 by the time we got on the road. And then it was 12:30 by the time we got to Port Canaveral because we got on the ship at 1:30. And I joined the Facebook groups beforehand, and there were a lot of people commenting that like Port Canaveral was not usually like the way it was when we got there. It was just a lot of waiting in line. And by the end of this trip, my kids were not very good at that. So, but we made it. And I mean, otherwise, like to get through security itself and at the check-in desk, I mean, once we got to those places, we were through. It was just, there were a lot of people, but they also said the ship wasn't that full.
Stepping back real quick, what was it like for you and your family kind of taking those first peeks at the ship?
Well, at first, I think when we pulled in, we saw the Fantasy first. And so the kids were like, oh, that's our ship. And we're like, no, it's not, because, they're all lined up. And there was another non-Disney one there. I forget. I think it might have been a Royal Caribbean one. It's just so looking at just how massive they are. And I mean, we watched, The Wish has the documentary on Disney Plus and, a whole bunch of YouTube. So just to see the Stern characters and all of that, it was all of our plans coming to life pretty much.
Love it. So you get through Port Canaveral and it's finally time to board the Disney Wish. What was that experience like for you and your family?
When you get on and they announce your name, I mean, my kids are bowing like they're royalty, as they should when they're walking through. Not a huge crowd to look at, but, they'll take it anywhere that they can get it. But because we did try to go up to our stateroom and it's supposed to be ready at 1:30, but we got there like a few minutes before that time and they weren't quite done yet, which was fine. So we pivoted and we went, of course, to the kids club because they had the open house. Got in on the third floor so they could ride the slide down, and they were just in heaven. I mean, they would have stayed there all day had we let them, but there were things that we wanted to do. And we got a sneak of Spider-Man while we were there. I don't think we were supposed to because he high-fived and he said hi, but he was kind of like, no, I got to go back to my cave. And then so we got them fully registered for that. They got to tour a little bit. We did go back. Our stateroom was ready after that was over, though. Dropped off all our carry-ons.
What stateroom did you book and what did you think of the staterooms as a whole?
So we had a deluxe ocean view family stateroom, no veranda, but it did have the Murphy bed. So it was one that fit 5 and there were only 4 of us, but our philosophy was anytime we have ever booked anywhere with bunk beds, our kids love the idea of them. Actually staying in them all night is a different story. So we wanted another lower level option. That way they weren't crawling into bed with us if we could help it. So, but no, I mean, it was bigger than I was expecting for sure. And the porthole window is huge, but it was it just had this gorgeous view. Loved all the outlet space. I mean, when you actually got onto the beds to sleep, they really are as comfortable as everybody says that they are. They're really glorious. But no, we were pretty impressed by it.
Awesome. And you mentioned being hungry. Where did you go and grab lunch?
So we went to Marceline Market and we were impressed with that too. Although the first day they are very pushy. They drink packages. Like I lost count of how many guys came over with those the
cooler bags and the packages.
The coolers, yeah. And they come over and like, hey, do you have enough to drink? And we're like, yeah, we're good. And they were lightning fast to clean up the plates. Like we were still eating or like we'd go up to get something else and our forks would be gone before we could get back. And which is really great. But I mean, they're trying to turn it over for a lot of people. But I mean, we thought the food was excellent there and we're very happy with it. And then after that, we went back to the stateroom just to get cleaned up because it was a long day. And then it was time for muster. And that, as I referred to it, it was a bit of a cluster. So our station was Worlds of Marvel. And if you know anything about the entrance of Worlds of Marvel, it comes like right out to the elevators. And what I noticed was that we as guests were told to get there at 3:30. And we did. And it seemed like most people were complying with that. I mean, there was a line of people, but it was going all the way out into the elevators. And then nothing was happening. And the staff weren't paged to report until 3:40. So it's 10 minutes of this line just clogging. Eventually they opened things up and we piled in. We got through the station and then, that was that. And then, of course, you've got to deal with the elevators again coming out. because our next stop was the sail away party. And then, yeah, so we make it up to the top for the sail away party. We had a pretty decent view for that. We were kind of off to the side, but we're not major crowd people, so we were okay with that. We didn't need to be totally front and center. But after the characters left, the dancing continued, but it was with like the actual cast member staff. And it was a way lighter crowd. And my kids just got out there and they were dancing with them for, 20, 30 minutes. And one in particular, so this was the week of my youngest's 5th birthday. And of course, she was telling everybody that she could. And so she told one of the cast members that, and they ended up sending her a birthday duck to her room. But it was all because of that little interaction at the sail away party. So, and then after that, we went back to our stateroom. We met our stateroom attendant. Her name was Yam, and our bags arrived shortly before dinner. And we went out and we explored the pools a little bit. And then our first dinner was at 1923.
Nice. And were you at main dining, first dining?
Yes, we had the early dining. Yeah, late dining was not going to be a preference for us in any way.
I feel that to my core.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we thought the food was phenomenal. My husband got lamb, duck, and filet mignon all in the same meal, and I don't think he's ever been happier. Good job on the food, Disney, I guess. But I will say, for us, that was probably our least favorite of the rotational dining meals, and only because our kids were going stir crazy. And there's just not a lot to keep them occupied. Now, we had some pretty good servers, and our assistant, Jules in particular, like she could tell, and she was like starting to draw on the tablecloths, like little games for them. So they really made their best effort, but they just, if they're sitting still after this whole day when all they want to do is play, they just kind of got a little restless at that one because there wasn't a whole lot going on. But there was a neighboring table with us there was like a trio of birthdays. So our table had a birthday, and then there were 2 at the next table over, and one family had purchased a birthday cake, but they just split it with everybody because they're huge, and it's like way more than one family of 3 can eat on their own. So everybody got a little bit of that too. And then once dinner was over, our kids could not have gotten back to the Oceaneers Club fast enough.
Yay.
Yeah. And so Mom and Dad then went back and got our popcorn buckets because we had gotten popcorn buckets at Epcot, and they let us use them on the boat, which was awesome to get that discount in both places. And then, but when we went back, we ended up with character sheets. That was a nice little surprise to have there, because the beds had all been made down. And we asked them, at least for the first night, to set all the beds up just so that we could see how they could do. And so they were all made up by the time we got back. But we wandered to the hyperspace lounge for a little bit in the bayou before we went off. And our first show was Seize the Day. And I am team Seize the Day. We thought it was amazing. We were really mad our kids missed that. We're like, you probably missed the best, like what you would want to watch. No, we thought it was just awesome. Like just to see, Goofy all suspended and swimming, and Crush couldn't be more hilarious throughout that. Yeah, we were really impressed. And it's a shorter one, so like it helps with their attention span too. So agreed.
It's a great intro to theater show.
It's the best of Disney, like the compilation of songs that they put out for sure. But that day wrapped it for us. We went, when that was done, we picked up our kids and we all headed back to bed.
Well, you wake up the next morning and your hotel room has miraculously showed up in Nassau. Did you have anything planned for Nassau? The
plan for Nassau was not to get off the ship. We went back and forth on it, but it was a 3-night sailing. And so I told my husband as we're planning this, I said, we either need to do 2 half days or we need to just not get off the boat at Nassau because I want to experience this ship.
If you said you were going back and forth, if you had gotten off the ship, was there like a particular something that intrigued you that was available in Nassau?
His dream was Atlantis, which the fact that we also went to Epcot on this trip made that a little bit out of reach just because it's all pricey. It all adds up after a while. So that was also part of the reason why it wasn't quite an easy decision, but that was what we were looking at, was like a day pass to Atlantis.
Well, then, how did you start your day at sea at Nassau?
So we went back to Marceline for breakfast and ended up seeing our assistant server there at the kids counter. And, like they do, they get to know you and they said hi and they asked how we're enjoying things, but recognized us completely. And so we ate there that morning. And then by the time we got done, we went up to get in line for the Incredicourse. And we were the first riders on. We got there. I mean, we were probably only 10 minutes early and there was nobody else waiting. And we're like, okay, we'll take this. But the cast member that they had running that was hysterical. I mean, somebody tried to sneak on before my kids got to go and he's making jokes about their villain origin stories and all that. And just a really nice, light way to start the day. And so they did a few rounds of that. And they loved it. And then we immediately went out. I mean, we were dressed in our bathing suits underneath, but we went out to the pool decks and immediately got on the Aquamouse. Line for that, also rather short. We got a couple rides in, and my kids will tell you that was one of their favorite things on the boat. Yeah.
Did you and your husband do either or both of those activities as well?
Aquamouse, yes. We did not go on the Incredicourse, though. We could have. I don't know. It wasn't us. And it's also hard because we wanted to take pictures and that's harder to do when you kind of have to be off of it, not in line. You got to be either on the side or up kind of in the upper level of that space that you can watch over. So we got some good pictures and video there. But no, we went on the Aquamouse with them. And I mean, we would say the same thing. It was worth it. And at that particular time, just the fact that you didn't have to, I mean, we've heard that the line gets crazy for that, as can the wait times. So the fact that we could just get right on it and go, round and round, it made it a little bit better, especially after the chaos of the first 2 days.
Did you spend a pretty good amount of time out on the pool deck then?
That was all of the morning. We just kind of bounced between all the pools on that deck, depending on which one each kid wanted to be at any given time, and just lounged around and watched whatever was on the funnel vision. And I mean, honestly, it's probably one of the more relaxing parts of the trip. And that's why we do these things. And it was nice. We needed that. Yeah, I think we got maybe 3 or 4 rides on the Aquamouse total. So it was we were bouncing between that and all the different pools. And then by the time we were all ready for lunch, we went over to the Festival of Foods this time and all got a little something different, as you're allowed to, because there are options. Yeah, I think the kids got some pizzas from Daisy's Pizza Pies. My husband got something, couldn't tell you what, I don't remember, from Mickey's Grill. And I got Donald's Cantina. I was in it for the Mexican. And then we had an interesting afternoon because the plan was we would have some adult time. So we would drop the kids off at the Oceaneers Club so they got some time to enjoy that. And we did. We made it to the Quiet Cove for a while, made some friends in the hot tub and got to chatting for a little bit. And those bartenders are on it. If they see you without a drink, they're like, hey, you need something? And, they make sure you have what you need at any given time. And then, that was probably 45 minutes to an hour that we spent there. And then we got out and cleaned up from that and attempted to do some trivia. But then one after the other, our kids kept calling to get picked up. And it seemed like a rather short amount of time from the day before. They couldn't have ditched us fast enough the first day. But I don't know. I think it's because we spent so much time together in the morning. They just kind of got snuggly and clingy, and they just wanted mom and dad a little more than we thought they did, or would anyway. So we picked them up and got everybody cleaned up for dinner, but it was still a little early and bingo was going on and it was pretty full. We couldn't get into that. So we ended up spending that time playing Disney's Uncharted Adventure. We got the game out on the cruise line app, and I think we got through two challenges through that whole thing. But it was a really great thing to entertain them, but they're not waiting in line, and it's not just, sitting in the stateroom. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, we're still getting to experience the ship and all its nice. So we were actually really glad that it's there, and they like video games, so they thought it was cool.
Did it all seem to run okay?
Yeah. And I wasn't connected to the ship's Wi-Fi. So it was all, whatever technology makes it happen without it. So yeah, we were happy. And then when we were ready and it was time for dinner, our second night was Worlds of Marble. And so we get in there. I will say this one's kind of in the middle for us. I thought the food was good. I don't know that it was anything, special, but the entertainment element was better. Like it was just enough to capture our kids' focus, but not, to the point that they were bored. And then when that was over, it was the second night, so it was pirate night. They're a little young for the full-blown party and fireworks. And so instead we went to Minnie's Pirates of the Caribbean show, and that was a lot of fun. They really liked that. And then we went to Mickey's main sale for some souvenirs because they had been getting Disney gift cards throughout Christmas so that they could spend things on their own. And we hadn't made it to the gift shops yet. And then after that, we opted not to go to the stage show. We watched it on the stateroom TV instead, but did the whole cookies and milk thing where we ordered it in just kind of basically day 2 was just day of relaxation, right? So we did everything like as calm as could be, but still enjoying all the elements as we could. So
that's great. See, that's what's so great about cruising. You could literally choose your own adventure. You can do as much or as little as you want, and you figured out a way to be able to really do it all without necessarily being out doing it all with the group, but still experiencing it. So
choosing nothing is always a great option on a cruise.
Always.
Yeah.
I love that they play those stage shows in your cabin. It's so good that you can have that experience in your cozy PJs, under your covers.
Well, especially for people with kids too, because that was what we ended up doing the first night was like we went and we saw it live, but then we're like, you guys have to see this. So we played it while they were falling asleep.
Oh, perfect.
So they could kind of see it. I don't think they were paying that much attention to it, but the option was there, and it was nice that we could relive it.
Love it. Does that about cap off your second day?
It does.
Love it. Well, moving on to your last full day and a very exciting one. You were on Disney's OG private island, Castaway. What were your expectations for Castaway?
I don't know that I had expectations for Castaway. I mean, obviously, having watched Disney Cruise Line since I was a kid, kind of like a bucket list item checked off, making it there. So I didn't have any preconceived notions, but like our stateroom, I couldn't tell you like the formal like lingo of what side we were on, but we had the view of Castaway.
So you were on the starboard side.
Yeah. So you could see it right out of our stateroom. And I mean, it was just breathtaking. Like it was to actually see it in person. Like if I had any expectations, it probably would have exceeded that. And, getting out there, when we get to that point, it was really just impressive how pristine it is, knowing that they average like 4,000 people that visited a day. But so one of the things we did when we ordered the cookies and milk was we also ordered like a little light breakfast snack that would just be there in the morning when everybody's getting ready. So some fruit bowls and orange juices to hold the kids over until we can make it to breakfast, which was the first thing we did. And because it was churro waffle day, so we had to get some churro waffles. And honestly, Marceline was probably by this point one of our favorite places to eat, just because of the options and the quality of food is there, and the fact that you can kind of just go at your own pace. You're not on somebody else's schedule. The churro waffles were about as good as we were hoping that they were going to be, so that was well worth it. But before we got off for the day, they were doing pictures with Anna and Elsa in Arendelle. So we went down to go check that out. And then when that was done, we left the ship. We got off and we took the tram. I thought that the nature of the way people work when they're making decisions and choosing with things, that everybody would go to the first family beach. So we went to the second tram stop and got off, especially because my kids were really interested in Pelican Point, and that's just a little bit closer to that. And boy, didn't everybody had the same idea. Like that was where everybody wanted to go. And so, but that was, I would say, half relaxation, half not. It was relaxation for me. My husband ran the 5K. So it was not quite as much for him. He wanted his free medal souvenir. I guess it wasn't free. He paid for it by running, but that's something he likes to do. So he was happy to do it. But there was also, so while I was back with the kids on the beach itself, there was a wedding going on, right? They were all set up right by Pelican Point and had the view of the ship in the background. But that was kind of neat to see. But I mean, they just spent, a couple hours in the morning just playing in the beach sand and getting in the water and enjoying. And for February, the water was cooler than I was expecting. And it was extremely windy. Like my hat kept blowing off. They actually ended up there was a lot of cancellations on some of the excursions. So we didn't have any booked. We just kind of wanted to enjoy things as they were. But most people that did, like you could just see the list growing throughout the day of the things that they were nixing because of that. So when we were ready and when they were open, we went over to Cookies 2 for lunch. Can't complain about anything we ate there. All really, really good food. And then the kids wanted to check out the Scuttles Cove version of Oceaneers on the island. So we dropped them off there for a while. And Mom and Dad got to spend some time relaxing. We went just to the first family beach and hung out and enjoyed some time in the sun and bathing there.
And the quiet.
Yes, the peace. Very peaceful. And then once everybody was ready, we headed back to the boat to get cleaned up for dinner. They were doing pictures with Belle at the Royal Studio. So we got in line for that. And we went out, we got a view of like the bridge area. And I actually have a picture of my kids there. And I think by then we had sailed away. Like we had started leaving Castaway, but you can just see the wind flipping my child's hair up. Like it gives like a capture of just how windy it was. But we went out on one of the decks and played some shuffleboard, really, again, making the most of like all the little things that you can do to occupy your time while you have to. And then the final dinner that we had was at Arendelle. And this for us was probably our favorite because it was the best of everything. But I also have a theory because I've listened to a lot of your episodes, and I think that people who are used to maybe like the Californian, Floridian, lighter cuisines like 1923 the most, because that's what that is. We're from New York, so we're colder climate, heartier food, especially in the wintertime. Like I think if you go back, like the people that like Arendelle are probably those people because I don't know, it just tasted, I was eating Swedish meatballs in lingonberry sauce and it was just amazing. But it's stuff that we're more used to. So, but on top of that, I mean, the show was spectacular and so well coordinated. We were not expecting like all the staff to get in on it and your servers, in the middle of these line and whipping their napkins up and around. It was really, really great. Our view was okay of the actual stage itself. Like it wasn't bad, but we were back by one of the entries to the kitchen. So that could kind of get a little bit distracting, but it was also kind of like magic because my oldest asked for a Shirley Temple. And I mean, it was like she turned around and it was there. Like it was, I don't know how she did it, but being that close to the kitchen, like it was just out in an instant. So there were some good parts about that, I guess. And then, but being that we had noted in online ahead of time that it was the week of our daughter's 5th birthday, when they do that, or when you do that, they bring out desserts, but they let you choose. Like they asked me the first night, they're like, well, what night do you want to celebrate? And they're princess geeks. So they really like, I'm like, it's got to be Arendelle because that's going to be the best night for that. And so that night, all the staff sang to her. They sang happy birthday. They brought out a little bit of an extra dessert and just a nice way to cap off the adventure. a little bit.
Love it. Did you get up to anything else your final evening on board?
Yeah, so this is where we split. My oldest really wanted to go back to the Oceaneers Club, and my youngest did not. So we took the oldest down, and then while she was there before like the main show started, we went to the silent disco. So that was in the Luna Lounge, and I don't. For those that aren't familiar with a silent disco, you have headphones on, but there are different stations connected to it. And anybody could be listening to a different song, but you're there dancing, and that's the whole premise of it. It was borderline karaoke, though, because there was this group of teens. I have no idea if they knew each other before they were on the ship or if they just kind of made friends through like the other clubs. But they all had themselves on the same station, and they were just singing to the top of their lungs. I mean, it was really funny and cute to watch. So no complaints about that there, but I don't think that's quite as common in a silent disco, or maybe it's a trend that's coming. I'm not quite sure. And then when we were done with that, we went for the show of that night, which was Aladdin. And that's another one. We were really thoroughly impressed with that. I mean, the genie up there making bluey jokes, like it was classic but modern all at the same time. And it was also really apparent to me how, like, it never dawned on me that the theater itself is green, and like the way they green screen like the back walls to just make everything a part of the show was just really amazing to watch. And we had gotten a couple drinks from Preludes beforehand, but my daughter also wanted something, and so the staff there made her like some makeshift fruit punch. She was not a fan, but it was a valiant effort. We were actually really impressed that they did that, just whipping up a kid's drink. She did not make it through all of the show, though, before we started getting antsy and needed to leave. But we needed to pack up anyway because it was last night, and we did opt to have them take our bags. We didn't do the
Express.
Yes, that's the words I'm looking for. Yeah, we didn't do the express checkout. We had them take the bags. So we had to get all that stuff ready. So that was fine. And then eventually we got our oldest, and everybody headed to bed. But that night, the boat was a rocket. And, you're trying not to, make anything of it. But we turned on the TV at one point because, the shower doors were opening back and forth and the hangers were clacking. And so we opened the channel where it tells you, like, you can see where you are and where the other ships are. But it also tells you like the speed that you're going and the winds. And it was between 50 and 60 there for most of the night. And I'm like, well, I don't really know anything about an apparent wind. But when we got to Port Canaveral the next morning, like I looked it up and I'm like, oh, that's a gale force. Okay. So that wasn't nothing. Like, it's nothing that the ships can't handle, but it's a little. And what we figured out too was, like, our kids slept through it. But the way the kids' beds face, they run starboard to port versus the adults goes aft to forward. So we were being jostled in a different direction, or they were being basically rocked to sleep, whereas we weren't. And
wait, so did one of the kids sleep in the bunk bed then?
they made it on the whole trip in the bunk beds. We only had to have the Murphy down the first night. I think they I don't know. Maybe they're a little bit lower than the standard, or maybe it was the character sheets or the designs up at the top. We made it through our first adventure with bunk beds and actually using the bunk beds. It's a milestone.
Yeah, I would say my son was like 7 or 8 before he tried the bunk bed. And now that's his preferred method when one exists. So they just have to get to a certain spot, I guess, and it's exciting.
Well, sadly, you wake up the next day and have to disembark. What was that process like, and what was your plan for getting home?
Yeah, so we got up, and obviously most of the bags were gone. So just whatever we were carrying with us that morning. We went to the seated breakfast. So we went back to Arendelle, said goodbye to our servers one last time. They were just on top of that coffee. And at one point I looked at our assistant server and was like, I really look like I need this, don't I? Because we did not get a lot of sleep the night before. And so that was really good. But then they were, as the time that was wrapping up, they were already starting to call the different tags because we had been cleared to debark. And they only got through 2. And then they just said, okay, all other tags, we're ready to go, which was fine. It was great. And then I mean, getting through customs was a breeze, and we had passports. So, I mean, that makes life easier there too, because it's all facial recognition. We found a porter to help us with our bags. We did do the ground transportation back to the airport too, but this one was much smoother. The ride was a lot faster because there was no traffic. Our kids were exhausted and slept most of the way. And honestly, getting back, there was everything went as planned. So no delays, got back the time that we expected, and just sad that it was all over.
Always sad when one ends, but our conversation about your sailing doesn't have to end. I have a few more questions for you. First off, did your family use the photo package?
Yes.
Did you find you got value out of that?
Yeah, I mean, we liked most of the pictures that they took. I do think that I was prioritizing that a little bit because we had bought it. Like, they have all these booths set up like out in the lobby before dinner. And so we would stop to make sure we did that before we go in. I don't know that I would have done that had we not bought the package. And they're cool to do, but when you're waiting in a line for anything, it is time that's taken away from something else. But I mean, they go around during the dinners and, take your photo there, which is nice. And they were like making sure they got one of everybody individually and then pairs on each side of the table. I think we were glad we did it too, on one sense though, because one of the things that I had remembered from my very, very first cruise was, and of course this was in the age when smartphones were still pretty new, so they weren't part of the ship experience, was just how good it felt to be disconnected. So the fact that I didn't have to be the one to take all the pictures all the time, I could be just a little bit more detached from my phone, which is part of the vacation itself. And the fact that you can get all the cruise activities and your stateroom TV, like you can kind of see what's going on when they're like, if you really want to disconnect, you can. And I do think that the photo package helped that a little bit.
Love it. What was something you wish you knew before you had sailed?
I think the pool hours were a little different than I was expecting. And that might be good for people who maybe have cruised before, not on Disney, but are coming onto Disney for the first time to know, just because they shut a lot of them down, like the main ones for the shows. So like if you have a long day and you're expecting to just have like a nice relaxing night, because the pools are pretty warm. So like even if it's a little chillier, they're nice to be in. I wasn't expecting them to be down so much, but that also might have been a byproduct of it only being a 3-nighter too, because there were a lot more shows on the main deck because they were cramming all of it in at one time versus I suspect if we were on a longer sailing, if the shows were more in the main stage area or in the Walt Disney Theater, those might open up a little bit more. But that's just my theory.
Gotcha. Did you have any other notable cast interactions from this sailing?
I think I touched on most of them. We had the one woman at the very beginning when we were getting onto our bus to head out, who just kind of acknowledged the kids by name and held our oldest daughter's hand. But really, I mean, our assistant server, Jules, was just phenomenal. Like the way she interacted with our family. Every time we saw her, it didn't matter if it was in Marceline or in the dining room itself. I mean, every night she had the exact thing our kids wanted out, ready to go. And of all things, pineapple juice. Not even on the menu, but she made it happen. Where they got it from, beyond me, but that's the part about the magic of it all. You don't have to know how it happens. It's just nice that it does. So
awesome. Well, what is next for you and your family?
So the itineraries for next year opened up like right before we sailed. So we were plotting our next adventure before we even left on this one. And we are going on a 6-night sailing on the Magic in Alaska in the summer of 2027. So we went from shortest sailing to we're going big next time, and we're all very excited. And that one is the week before my oldest's 10th birthday. And we went back and forth. There was 1 week where we could have gotten an extra port, and it would have been in the week of her 10th, and she would have turned in the middle of it. But we opted to go for a different one, like the week before.
Keeps her in the same kids club the whole trip, which probably in that aspect makes more sense.
Right.
Yeah. Regardless, will be a truly amazing trip. We hope
Yeah.
you guys have an absolute blast. But Ashley, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your family's first sailing aboard the Disney Wish.
Thank you for having me and for doing this. I mean, I think I mentioned we listened to this a lot to prepare, and it really is good information. So we love it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well, Christy, where can our listeners follow you?
You can find me all over the internet at Pack Your Pixie Dust. And if you are interested in working with me to book a future cruise, you can find my information in the show notes. Lake has created a contact me page, and you can fill that out and we can work together for no additional cost to you. Lake, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram and YouTube at MouseGen, and follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at DCL Podcast, or find more information at our website, dclpodcast.com. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Well, that's going to wrap up the show. Once again, we want to thank Ashley for coming on and sharing her family's first cruise on the Disney Wish. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to thank our Patreons who help make this show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/DCL Podcast. Whether you're boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Christy, and Steve, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.